I think that many times recruiters will look at a job description and say, okay, that's it. I got the job description. Now I'm going to go hunting. And that's not the whole story. You got a job description, but there's this massive context around that thing that is really important to understand.
So what does it really take for your business to attract world-class talent today? I'm Dave Travers, president of ZipRecruiter. And on Talent All-Stars, we shine a light on the people and the day-to-day processes behind recruitment and retention at some of the world's most influential businesses. So we've had some incredible talent leaders on this show in the first few episodes. But today we get the perspective of a CEO, and not just any CEO, someone who's been a major player in tech for 40 plus years and mentored tons of executives, including me. It's Blake Irving, former chief executive of GoDaddy, board member at Autodesk, DocuSign, and ZipRecruiter. He even advises a Formula One racing team. Before taking over at GoDaddy, Blake was a product leader at Yahoo, Microsoft, Compaq. He's made big changes, built amazing cultures, recruited countless superstars to come work for him, and he's got the stories to prove it, as you'll hear today. So let's start this conversation at the beginning, early in Blake's career, with a story about two very different experiences with two very different recruiters.
The first recruiter I met really didn't know the business all that well. That was recruiting me to Oki, but it was really very transactional and really wanted me to get my feet through the door. The second recruiter I dealt with was at Compaq Computer back in the day, and now part of HP. And that recruiter knew the business, knew the directors in the business, knew the personalities of the people in the business, knew how I would mix with the people that I was interviewing with. So he was just way more integral into the business, and actually was such a better draw for me. And I was, through him, I was attached to the business, and I'd done a bunch of research, of course, on the company, but I was attached. And I think the most effective recruiters that I knew were the ones that really understood your business, understood what your goals were, understood even the numbers of your business, and understood the personalities and the characteristics of the macro culture, and then the culture that you actually pervaded in your own division or your own group. And they just seem to be way more effective in hiring and recruiting than just somebody who was transactional like that first individual that I met at Oki.
So one of the things that comes through so clearly is that I knew you at the time already when you took over the CEO role at GoDaddy. And one thing that was really interesting watching you do, or two things you did simultaneously. One is you took a very strong, scrappy, founder-led culture, and you were the professional coming in to professionalize it in some extent, which would have been very easy for that to be not fun. But at the same time, I saw you, at a holiday party wearing the loudest jacket, having the best time of anyone there, mixing with people and attracting talent from all over the place. How did you think about a successful company, but one that had to transform some of its attitudes toward talent and talent strategy and grow up a little bit, but at the same time, keeping it really fun? How did you manage that dialectic?
I don't know. No, yeah. But I mean, if I think back when I was doing it, I'm not exactly sure I knew what I was doing, but I have a lot of energy. So throwing a ton of energy into it. And Bob Parsons, the founder of the company, he's a super funny guy. And he's a very, I guess you could call him a controversial figure, but man, he's a great marketer, gets incredible stuff. He was a U.S. Marine. He is a driver. And I think when you're trying to grow a company, and I think that's amazing for a founder, when you're trying to scale a company up to the next level, you actually have to be somebody who brings in people that don't want to just, follow directions. They want to create their own envelope of creativity and have their goals and own them in total. So I remember having this conversation with Bob, and I actually had my interview at Whisper Rock on the golf course with Bob. But he asked me, how do you think about business? And he gave me his example. He goes what I do is I get an idea, I have this idea, I give it to the best 12 guys in the company. They go work on it. If it works, we do it. If it doesn't, we don't. And I go, well, yeah, that certainly has been, successful for you. It's almost $1 billion revenue company. You sold it for $2.25 billion. So obviously worked for you. The way I think about this is I basically get a vision for what we want the company to be, form a strategy around that supports that vision, and then kind of take that strategy and put it together in components that together aggregate up to that strategy. And then I get leaders for each one of those aggregated components. And then we all drive to that, get the right people and we all drive to that result. And he's kind of looking at me curiously going, well, and I go, that's a 3 to 5 year, it takes like 3 to 5 years to actually pull it off. Because, if the strategy only lasts a year, it wasn't a strategy at all. It was just tactics. So, that's how I think about it. And he goes, well, that's really unusual. That's not how I think about it, but I guess that's why we're talking to you. And so I try to create an environment that honored the culture that Bob had built, which was an incredibly scrappy culture of people knocking down walls, etc., but tried to actually introduce cultural attributes of the organizations that I had run as well. And I remember having a whole bunch of conversations with people in the company, asking them, what do you like about the culture and what don't you like about the culture? And I won't go into details of what they did and didn't like, but they were really articulate about what they liked and what they didn't. And so I said, well, why don't we just build a culture that is about what you like, and we'll throw out all the stuff you don't like. And I kind of had this visual of folks talking about their culture in the company. And it's a glass pyramid sitting on a round table you might find at a conference room or maybe even at a wedding where there's 8 people sitting around the table. Everybody's admiring this glass pyramid in the middle of the table, talking about their culture and how great it is. Now, just like an iceberg, underneath the table, if you picked up the drape around the table and looked underneath it, there'd be this continuation of the pyramid all the way down to the floor that had the attributes of the culture that they didn't like and were afraid to talk about it. And so what I started doing in the company was in a fun-making way was talking about the things that they didn't like. And I'd start assailing cultural attributes, which made it safe for them to assail cultural attributes. And I did, hundreds of one-on-ones and group meetings, et cetera, in my first month of being there just to learn as much as I possibly could. And these folks just started oozing all the things they didn't like and what they did like. And as we started hiring people from other companies, I started asking the same questions of them. And so I said, well, all that stuff that you're going to bring with you, and Microsoft has them, Yahoo has them, the good stuff and bad stuff. Let's just leave behind all the bad stuff and just bring in the good stuff and try not to create our own bad stuff.
Okay, so I think about talent leaders today who are faced with the strategic choice or a talent imperative to make a change, to implement a new system, get more resources, hire in a smarter way. And as they advocate, as they go to senior management, chief people officer, CEO, whatever it is, put yourself in their shoes. If they're pitching to you, what advice do you have for them to advocate effectively so that they can convey the importance of the investment or the change that needs to be made?
I think they have to be super mindful of what the business objectives are. The business objectives can include things like, let's make sure that we're going to have gender parity. That's a business objective. Let's make sure that we're going to have pay parity. Let's make sure that we're not going to have disparity among the ranks, because people talk. People talk amongst themselves in the company, and they know what's going on. Even if the human resources department doesn't want people talking about their salaries, which I totally understand, that's not how it works. And so you have to be, I think, super thoughtful about that. And when you're communicating to whether it's a general manager of a division, understand the pressure that individual is under to grow their numbers, whatever their numbers happen to be, whether it's profitability, whether it's cash flow, whether it's top line revenue, whether it's customer satisfaction. Understand that really, really well. And when you're talking about recruiting or getting extra resources to recruit talent for them, focus on their objectives, whether they're any of those four things, and think really mindfully about the pressure that those folks are under, because the only way that they're going to solve their problems, and this isn't lip service, bringing in the right talent to achieve the objectives that they have for the next quarter, the next 5 years. And those are very, very different hires, but understanding that is really important. And I think that many times recruiters will, look at a job description and say, okay, that's it. I got the job description. Now I'm going to go hunting. And that's not the whole story. You got a job description, but there's this massive context around that thing that is really important to understand. And that's from the head of recruiting all the way down to individual recruiters. And for the recruiters who want to grow their careers and eventually be the head of recruiting in an organization, and then eventually become the chief people officer, I think the way to think about that is business alignment. Certainly, it's being really, really good at your job, understanding the tools you need to use to be great at it, but having that business context is unbelievably important, and having a personal context into the people that you are hiring for, all the way down to the hiring manager, and then the hierarchy that sits on top of that hiring manager. Understanding that is really important.
Yeah, I love how you said that. Okay, so thinking through that moment you take over GoDaddy and thinking about the talent that was there before and the types of people that were there before and where you needed to go, how did you think about bringing those people that were already there along for the next part of the journey, who had a bunch to offer, and how to integrate people who were new and different based on the new kind of standard and the new kind of culture you were looking to set going forward?
Yeah, but so the listening tour that I did at GoDaddy, where I was talking to literally hundreds of employees the first month, and I could tell pretty much who was going to be along for the ride, because we were going to be making a lot of changes. We were going to go from a marketing company with an IT staff to a technology company with a strong marketing team. Those are very different profiles. And I have a couple of different anecdotes. One was everybody in the company was filling out a time card. And I think there's a interesting cultural attribute for a company. You either trust your employees or you don't trust your employees. So you trust your employees to work hard, or you have them fill out time cards. And so I remember having this conversation with the CHRO who was there when I joined, who was didn't last all that long. So, why are people filling out time cards? And she explained that that's just what we do. Why are there locks on the doors going into the executive suite, and nobody can come in here? And that's just how we've been doing it. And I remember having a conversation with our chief financial officer, and he came in on a kind of panicked on a Friday and said, "Hey, you haven't signed the time cards." And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, "Well, everybody in the company signs a time card." I go, "Even you?" He goes, "Yeah, even me. I said, yeah, we sign time cards." And I'm like, "Well, look, if we're going to hire people from the Silicon Valley and from the best in breed companies like Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, eBay, I went through a laundry list. Like they're not filling out time cards. Like their non-exempt employees aren't filling out time cards. Like exempt employees, hourly workers are, but not everybody else. So I don't get it." He goes, "Well, I'm not going to get paid if I don't fill out a time card." Well, look, we're not going to have time cards. Like if you're a non-exempt employee, we're not going to fill out time cards anymore. It's like, "Well, how am I going to get paid?" I go, "You're the CFO. I know you're going to figure it out. No more time cards." That was it. And we figured it out, and people weren't filling out time cards anymore. Can you imagine having a Google engineer show up at your company, and he's got to start filling out time cards for every week when these guys are working. I asked the CFO, how many hours a week do you work? I don't know, 60. I go, what do you write down in your time card? Well, 40. That makes no sense. I don't get it. Okay, so that was one example of a big change of people that were in the company that were going to make the next trip. And that shows you they get so used to doing what they've been doing for so long, they don't even think it's an option to do something different. Another example, and it was a very regional company. It was based in Scottsdale, and their chief technology officer, either chief technology officer or chief scientist, I was doing a one-on-one with him, and I said, we're having this one-on-one, and he's talking about issues in the company, and like, well, to solve a lot of these things, we're going to have to start hiring from the Valley. I mean, the Silicon Valley. And he looks at me curiously, and he said, "That's the only place we hire from." And I looked at him kind of strangely. I said, "What?" He goes, "The Valley. We're in the Valley of the Sun." I'm like, "Oh, no. That's not the Valley I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Valley where all of these other companies that have a massive amount of talent exist. In fact, we're going to have to open offices there. We'll have to open offices in places where this talent exists, because you're not going to pull everybody into Scottsdale, as lovely as it is. People's kids go to school. They have an ecosystem that they've grown up in or has grown up around them, and they're not moving. So we're gonna have to figure that one out."
It reminds me, the first company I worked for was Disney. The second job I had was in the federal government. The travel policies at those two places were, I think over 100 pages each. And then I got a summer internship at eBay, and the travel policy was spend money like it's your own. And what's amazing about that is it sets the tone, in addition to the fact no one's actually reading the 100-page travel policy, to your point, is that it sets the tone. Like, it's such a simple way to tell people through a little bit of action how you think about them, as opposed to telling them, "I really value you." It's a way
Yeah.
in practice.
Yeah, that whole notion of trust versus distrust pivot made a huge difference in the company. We trust you or we don't trust you. Look, we trust you to do the right thing. We're going to basically assume that people are good. And if you're not going to make it here.
So we talked a little bit about your company-wide hiring strategy and philosophy, but let's zoom into a specific, let's pick a role, sales, marketing, whatever. Like, if you're hiring for in a particular skill set, how do you apply that in practice to one single role that's on your desk today?
So you're going to look at the technical spec of the role. You're going to be paying very deep attention to that. So you're going to make sure that you have qualified this individual and asked a bunch of questions around their expertise in whatever area it is, whether it's customer success, sales, marketing, product management, engineering, finance. You're going to go through the technical spec and say, okay, this person's really good. It does not change the fact that they have to have a thought about what the business is trying to achieve, whether they're a cultural fit and whether they're a departmental fit. Because a manager, when he's interviewing somebody, is thinking about, let's just say a span of control is 7 people. He's going to be thinking, when he's interviewing this person, is she going to work really well with the other 7 people that are in my group? Cultural fit in the company, yeah, hopefully he or she has already done that. And so they have cultural fit. Is this individual going to fit in my group? And I think that is something that's really important for a recruiter to think about, which means they actually have to know the manager, have to know what they're trying to incubate in their own group within the context of the larger business, the larger division, whatever it happens to be, down to the technical expertise. I think it's actually very similar to hiring, a C-level executive. They have to be technically excellent at what it is they do, and they have to be a fit.
We're going to switch to some rapid fire questions, so buckle up, get ready. So number 1, the CEO of the company your chief people officer or head of talent gets into the elevator with you. It's just the two of you, and you're now the head of talent. The CEO says, so what metric should I think about in terms of measuring the success of our talent department? What would you say? What's your answer to the CEO?
I think you have to look at how many recruiters, how many people we're bringing in. Are they at a bar where you're accepting quite a few of the people that we're bringing in, and that the folks that have been here for some period of time, their career is growing. So it's about, bringing in the raw talent, having them meet a specific bar, and then did they fit and were they able to be retained? Awesome. I think that's how I think.
Yeah. Okay. Interviewing. What's your number one tip for being a great interviewer?
First of all, ask thoughtful questions.
Give me an example of a thoughtful question.
Okay. So I used to do this deal where I would ask a question because I wanted to learn how people think. I would ask questions that had absolutely nothing to do with their job. And so I used to do this one at Microsoft and say, okay, you have $1 million. Back then it was a lot of money. You have $1 million. I want you to walk me through the process of building a house. I'm going to give you $1 million. I want you to take me all through the process when you open the door with the key. Now walk me through it. And I could tell what kind of person they were by where they hung out. Did they hang out about the selection of the lot? Did they hang out about the selection of the contractor? Did they build the house themselves? Did they walk me through the process of putting up the boards and putting up the studs and putting in plumbing and electrical? So you just end up getting this really interesting view of somebody. And then I had another question that I would ask them. And then, of course, I'd ask them a ton of questions about the technical role that they were in, which are the same for everybody. And those are to some extent, those are right or wrong answers. And then I'd ask them about something they really love to do. Talk to me about something you really love to do, and you're getting some personal information about these individuals. And then you're going to see if they spark. Do they have a spark? Do they light up? Are they absolutely thrilled about something that's totally esoteric? Are they willing to expose themselves to something that you might not even think is cool? And it's similar to when somebody's giving you that house thing. If they go back and correct themselves in the process, like this one time somebody poured the foundation and forgot to pour all the plumbing in before he poured the foundation. And she goes, oh no, I forgot to put the plumbing. Can I go back? You go, yeah, of course you can go back. But the fact that they were willing to correct themselves in an interview situation said so much about that person's confidence and integrity. And it was just, not, okay, I'm just going to cover that up and I'm just going to keep going. I know I made that mistake. So that was pretty fundamentally different, I think, than a lot of answers you'll get.
Blake Irving, CEO of GoDaddy, executive at Yahoo, Microsoft, board member at Autodesk, ZipRecruiter, DocuSign. Thank you so much for your time. Amazing. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks, Dave. Always fun to talk with you.
That's Blake Irving. You can find him on LinkedIn. We'll put a link to his profile in the description below. Thanks for watching the show this week. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more episodes like this, or leave a thumbs up or a comment if you enjoyed this video. And remember, we're an audio podcast too. We're in all the podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Just search Talent All-Stars and hit follow. I'm Dave Travers, and we'll see you right back here with another Talent All-Star next week.